video, you would have seen that we launched our crowdfunder initiative, giving people the opportunity to join our pack. And since we went with our digital launch, the press response has been fantastic. We've already appeared online at the Redditch Standard, the Redditch Advertiser, Birmingham Mail. We're in lots of newspapers. I've done interviews with the BBC, and we've spoken to Capital and also to Free Radio. It's been relentless. The support so far has been exceptional.
So we're just waiting for the call from BBC WM to do a live interview for their Sunday evening show with Molly Green, which is very exciting. So any minute we should receive the call, and they'll be going live across Birmingham and the West Midlands. Hi Molly, great to speak with you. Yeah, ever since a young age, I've been completely fascinated with animals, and it's always been my ambition to open an animal park. So I know the term zoo is used quite frequently, but we're looking to create a conservation-focused organisation in Redditch, which showcases animals in huge enclosures which replicate the natural environment, ultimately creating an interesting day out for local residents and also tourists, but also highlighting some of the issues which wildlife face out in the wild, and obviously is currently putting them in danger of extinction. Absolutely. Conservation is at the forefront of our mantra, and for the last 2 years I've ran the London Marathon to raise funds for Save the Rhino, and it is my absolute aspiration to ensure that animals on the site have the best possible enclosures. You're right about the negative connotations of zoo. Many people may have visited zoos in the 1980s when primates were kept behind bars and there were really low standards, but thankfully the regulation around zoos and wildlife parks has improved in the last sort of 20-30 years, and zoos are moving towards a vision of being a place without bars. So through careful landscaping, creating captive habitats which actually replicate the surroundings the animals would find out in the wild. So for Easter next year, which is our anticipated opening, we should have some exciting species on display, such as meerkats, ring-tailed lemurs, and even zebras and ostrich. But over the next 5 years, we'll gradually add more animals to the collection. And in phase 1 of our project, we're looking at replicating the African savanna and having animals such as antelope and eland out grazing amongst the fields of Redditch. Yeah, I completely understand your question. We've had an unprecedented experience going through lockdown, and zoos all around the country have literally seen their income freeze for a significant period of time. But what actually gives me great cause for optimism is the fact that we are designing Heart of England Wildlife Park with coronavirus and social distancing and guest safety at the forefronts of our minds. So currently we're working with the architects to design one-way systems which could work should there be greater restrictions imposed upon Redditch. We're looking at social distancing markers to be put onto the paths from day one. So rather than being forced to react to the coronavirus pandemic like every existing zoological collection in the country, we're actually building a brand new attraction, probably the first in the country, which is actually putting the ability to manage coronavirus and ensure guest safety at the forefront. Our collection planning has obviously considered the full costings, and we've looked at the cost of feeding animals at different collections. But with something like penguins, the cost of feeding them is very expensive, and the filtration required for, the water systems. We're not going to have Chester Zoo in Redditch on day one. This is, a 5-10 year project about getting Heart of England Wildlife Park established. And yes, there are reserves in place. We have the support of commercial banks already. But as you mentioned earlier, we are actually doing a crowdfunder initiative and calling upon the local community to really get behind the project and help us to put Redditch back on the map. You've mentioned already, we live in an unprecedented time. You mentioned, lockdown 2.0, essentially. We can't anticipate that. That could cause delays. But best case scenario, we could have our wildlife visitor attraction open to guests in Redditch by April 2021. Really good question, I think the way that my story's been portrayed in the media over the last few days, it seems like it's a nice pipe dream of an idea, but actually for the last 6 months, I've been working night and day, to get the business foundations in place. And like I said previously, I've been looking for a site for the last 3 years. I literally text my mum and dad at the end of March saying, by the way, I've sold my house, I've quit my job, and I'm building a zoo. And to be honest, they weren't surprised, but they've been incredibly supportive, and I really do thank them for that. And of course, they put their hand in the pockets to also help get the project off the ground. So with the crowdfunder initiative, we already have £41,000 approximately on there, so donated from the local residents in the community. Our target is £300,000 on the crowdfunder, and then obviously we've got the equity from my house and also the support of the startup loans company and the commercial banks as well to make up the difference. Oh, fantastic. The comments I've received have been absolutely wonderful. And we've received hundreds and hundreds of job applications in advance. We've received messages not just from the local community, but as far away as Ethiopia, South Africa, Spain, Brazil, messages from all over the world. People believe in the vision of Heart of England Wildlife Park, and we really want to bring it to Redditch. Yeah, so if you go onto the Heart of England Wildlife Park website, which is hofewildlifepark.com, all one word, you can join our pack. And for £35, you can actually become a member of our community, where you will be able to take part in voting on key decisions relating to the development of Heart of England Wildlife Park, voting on things like enclosure design, which animals we exhibit. We really want this to be a community attraction, and we want the input of the people of Redditch, the West Midlands, and even further afield. So if you've ever dreamed of opening a zoo or working with animals, please do check out our crowdfunder, have a look and support our vision. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're looking to bring something along the lines of Cotswold Wildlife Park or Yorkshire Wildlife Park to Worcestershire. It definitely isn't those zoos with bars from the 1980s. Hopefully we're moving away from that as a zoological community. Thank you, Molly. Have a great evening.
So we're just on our way back now from an interesting meeting with a Redditch resident. Since releasing our intentions to launch Heart of England Wildlife Park in Redditch, we've been inundated with overwhelming numbers of inquiries and positive comments of support. But one of the most interesting letters which I've received was from a guy called Alan and his wife Carolyn, and they're Redditch residents, and they claimed to have the original artwork and plans for the 1960s Redditch Zoo proposals on a site not so far from Bordesley Abbey. And naturally I was interested in finding out more about this. I've been trying to find out as much information as possible about the original plans and haven't had much luck. But I've literally just met with Alan now, and my brother Sean's come along with me, and we've just seen these original plans. It's absolutely fascinating to see how there was an intention to have sea lions and penguins and hippos and primate enclosures and bird aviaries in Redditch in the 1960s, and you can't help but wonder how different Redditch would be and how much it would have been a hub for the whole of the Midlands had they have built that zoo in the 1960s. It seems like there was a breakdown between Colin, who was the guy who wanted to build the zoo in Redditch, and the council in relation to parking and amenities and infrastructure, and the zoo never got built.
To hear more details about the proposed zoo for Redditch in the 1960s, make sure that you check out episode 4 of From Concept to Conservation.